Hey, everybody. I am pleased to announce that the man that many consider the best trial lawyer of his generation, and that's saying quite a bit if you think about it, and a legend in the Bay Area, a legend everywhere, really. Retired trial lawyer Jim Brosnahan is here. Jim, welcome.
Thanks very much.
You got it.
You're very kind.
Thank you. Oh, hey, I'm honored to be able to introduce you. This is fantastic, folks. I want to read a little bit about Jim before we get going. And as I wrote and said, I'm pleased to introduce the man called the top trial lawyer in America of his generation, San Francisco Bay Area Attorney James Brosnahan is the author of the new book, Justice at Trial: Courtroom Battles and Groundbreaking Cases. Mr. Brosnahan has been a trial lawyer for over 60 years, 5 years as federal prosecutor, 55 years in private practice, with 47 years at the San Francisco law firm Morrison Foerster. He has been a senior of counsel at what is known popularly as MOFO for the 3 years during which he wrote his memoir. Besides being a trial lawyer, Mr. Brosnahan taught at Berkeley Law School for 10 years, Go Bears, continues to lecture on law in the Supreme Court, and is a plein air painter, according to his website, jimbrosnahan.com. Jim is really best known for the 157 cases he has been in as a trial lawyer. Some of Jim's clients have included the former chairman of Hewlett Packard Patricia C. Dunn, the Oakland-Alameda County Coliseum Joint Powers Authority against the Oakland Raiders in 2003. Thank you, Jim. For Raiders tight end Marcus Williams, who collected $415,000 in damages March 22nd of 2005, when an Alameda County jury ordered Bill Romanowski, the linebacker, legendary linebacker, to pay the former tight end for punching him in the face during a 2003 preseason practice drill. The American Taliban, John Walker Lindh, and his prosecutor, Mr. Brosnahan, was called by the Justice Department's independent counsel in the Iran Contra to be the lead prosecutor for Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger. In total, Jim has more than enough experience to weigh in on the legal doings of the Trump administration in its second term. Trump's broad reach as president includes judicial appointments, policies and actions on immigration, law enforcement, executive orders, undermining the rule of law in areas like abortion and reproductive health care, LGBTQ rights and civil rights protections, and labor and economic justice. Indeed, on his LinkedIn page, he has taken up some of these issues and presented conclusions that would give any American the shivers, and I want to present one of those examples right now. And this is on Jim weighing in on what is known as the Nome versus Doe case. And I will play that right now. In fact, I'm going to have to adjust the volume for that, make sure, so that we hear it. And I'm glad because echo cancellation was on. Now I had to turn it off momentarily. And so here we are with that. Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 4 hours ago, the U.S. Supreme Court decided a case in immigration that I think establishes that they will give Donald Trump almost anything he asks for. Speaking for myself, I conclude that these justices, when they this morning decided to deport 500,000 immigrants, they crossed a line of due process. A number of the immigrants entered the country legally. The court did not mention the need for individual examination on the merits. Some of the immigrants admitted legally were allowed for humane reasons. We will never know the merits of those cases. The Supreme Court does not know the merits of those cases. There will be no due process, no decisions on the merits, As the court cleared the way for 500,000 immigrants to be summarily deported, this represents a growing trend at the Supreme Court level, which started during President Trump's first term, to allow summary deportation when the cases have never been heard on the merits. The Supreme Court dispatched 500,000 immigrants this morning. No facts, no case analysis, no rationale. Trump's plan to flood the courts is working. Trump's plan to flood the courts is working. And the Supreme Court is having trouble visibly in handling it. It's a great concern to a lot of people, I'm sure. The number of this mass deportation almost guarantees that one or more citizens will be swept up in the net. That's simply the odds that they will grab somebody from Venezuela that looks like a European, let's say, and that the chances that will happen, let's put it that way, are increased because of the great number that are now available for deportation. An explanation of what's wrong with this procedure is found in the shadow docket by Stephen Vladeck, a professor of law at Georgetown. These are summary matters that are being handled, and the personal difficulty that is inflicted on these people, we can only imagine. This is not America as I have known it. This is not due process. This is not the way to do it. And I'm speaking as an individual, but I don't think I'm alone. I come from a family of immigrants back at the end of the day, and I know how they were treated. It wasn't well. The Irish on the East Coast were not treated well. So here we're sitting, we're watching, and I hope we're all doing what we can. This is my little way of getting the information out there. This case is wrong, and the dissent makes it clear in a lot of detail, about 9 pages, exactly why it's wrong.
That, Jim, I'll switch over to turn on echo cancel. So we have the cancellation there, but we had to be able to hear that. StreamYard's kind of quirky software, but nonetheless, yikes. Yikes, and followed by images that if I showed it on this YouTube channel, I think YouTube might restrict it age-wise. But we're shown on television again and again and again. Jim, how did we get into this mess? Let me ask you what may be a dumb question.
Well, I think there's a simple answer for it, and it's with the Supreme Court. When Trump first was in office, for the first time, the Supreme Court allowed a number of matters to come with them when all there was an injunction proceeding, not a trial, not a hearing, not a question of what is your background and do you have an excuse and all of that. That's called due process. They have held twice that anybody is entitled to due process. That's an important point. That's a central point. The Supreme Court has held that. But then, and this is a more recent case, they allowed the deportation of 5,000 people who, some of whom, a number of whom in that case, came to the United States and were allowed in because they were fleeing difficulties in their own home nation. And Venezuela is in upheaval. They have a dictator. There are people in Venezuela who are killed for political reasons, and they're going to be sent back. So what's wrong with that? It's against American law. We have provisions that when someone is fleeing violence in their home country, they may be entitled to stay here at least while that difficulty goes on. I tried a case in Tucson that lasted 6 months, and it was all about that provision. What is lost sometimes is when sanctuary is mentioned, the president obviously has no idea what sanctuary is. And if he found out, I think he might be shocked. And even that might be the point where he becomes embarrassed, because sanctuary comes from religions, plural. And it provides that when someone is fleeing a country because they're in danger, that the obligation, the religious obligation, is to take them in. You never hear that in the conversation, but it's true.
And what is, if someone, I want to really get this up front and center, if someone who is a legal alien even is watching this, how should they conduct themselves? What should they do?
Well, it's not a radical idea what they should do. I think if they're entitled to be here, then they can pursue a life as though they were entitled to be here.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the president signs a piece of paper by itself doesn't mean that that particular person has to go. If they are arrested, they can insist on a lawyer. It may be hard to get a lawyer, but they can insist on a lawyer. A lot of very good lawyers out there working day in and day out, trying to help these people. And they can insist on a hearing in front of an immigration judge. They're entitled to all that. Will they get that in this 500,000 bunch of people? No, they won't. And that's inevitable. What the Supreme Court did is just say there's an injunction at the district court level. We're stopping that. They call it a stay, but they're stopping that, which means the government is free to deport all 500,000. So when they did that, I have respect for the court, for the position of justice on the Supreme Court. I've always had it. I argued 2 cases up there. I have a respect for the position. But if I may say so, I don't have respect for this court with regard to immigration matters. I just don't.
Why is it that, I mean, look, I'll just say it. My view of the court historically, and I think I speak for most Americans, was this is an apolitical body.
Yep.
They're going to make decisions that are based on the rule of law and the details of a case.
And they're not easy cases either.
And yet we have what looks like almost dial a Supreme Court judge from Trump's perspective. He can literally go in and dial a case and get a verdict. I know that's hyperbole, but why is it that it seems, I'll just say it, I'll say it from a street point of view. Why does it seem like there's some other quid pro quo going on other than just the fact that these judges were appointed by Donald Trump?
Well, the danger of being a judge, I think, is that you might be tempted to allow ideology, that is, fixed views, not just of what the law is, but sometimes even what your personal religion is.
Wow.
That can surface too. But with regard to ideology, this court actually is composed of at least 5 and probably 7 people, 6 people really, who have been politically active before they were on the bench in a group that espoused great power on the part of the president, whoever the president was. And they decided one of the worst cases really in the history of the court, where they gave immunity, 2 kinds: absolute immunity to the president for what he does, and conditional immunity for what he can do. Whatever.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. That was, I remember that happened before Trump ran for his second term.
That's correct. It happened in June of 2024.
Yeah.
So he was running.
He was
But
running.
he hadn't been elected. That's
Right.
an important point. They gave it to any president. Any president, under certain circumstances, can commit a crime. It's almost the fulfillment of Trump's comment, "I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I'd never be convicted."
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think of it when I heard that. I didn't think of it as anyone. In fact, most people thought, "Oh, that's for Trump," and and Trump was on the campaign trail.
They talk about it as though Trump was there and they gave him immunity. It's an important point. I'm going to mention it in my talk on Tuesday. I'm giving a talk on the Supreme Court cases, and so it was neutral that way. But giving a lot of power to a president is almost assured to give us an authoritarian administration. And we're getting it now.
Wow.
We're getting it. This is an authoritarian administration. That's why millions of people are in the street. Why are they there? They're there for so many different reasons that the signs they hold up cover all kinds of things. In fairness, I have to admit, I demonstrated in front of the Federal Building where I practiced for years. And I had a sign, "Don't threaten the judges."
I saw, yeah.
If you'll allow me, I just want to say it out loud on TV. Don't threaten the judges. All right? I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're president of the United States, especially if you're president of the United States. Don't threaten the judges.
Yeah, it is really heinous place that he's taken us to. It's almost, I dare I say, like we're in what one would think mafia times would be like, in a sense, but he's president of the United States. But my concern is there some, I have 2 other concerns. It has to do with the media in the background, basically giving this view that when Trump was filing these executive orders, they never mentioned Congress. They never said, well, Congress controls the purse, right?
Yeah.
And
where is Congress? The silence of Congress, and I would include the Democrats.
yes,
As well as where are they? Are they really that timid? I'll tell you what I learned in the practice of law, because there are bullies in the practice of law. There's some that are hired because they are bullies. And what I found worked is you go right at them. You go right at them. And it should have been done early. What do I mean? I mean verbally. They can't stand it. This president, for example, went ballistic at a reporter because she asked a question about being called taco.
yep.
And every other president would have said, well, people make jokes. You know how it is. And they think it's funny. And so, that's the way they pass it off, because it happens to every president. Oh, no, not this president. He's an angry man.
Mm-hmm.
He's an angry man. And everything is delivered in anger.
Yes.
Now he's going to go, most recently, within hours, he's going to go to other Democratic cities, which he has condemned without any evidence or whatever he's talking about how in those cities they're cheating on the voting and all that stuff. And that goes out there on his broadcasts and so forth. He's turning one against the other, all up and down. I don't feel that way. I think people who voted for him had some ideas about why they were doing it. I don't think those ideas are what he's now doing.
It reminds me of something that the actor Richard Dreyfuss said to me at the 2010 Night of 100 Stars Oscar party.
Yeah.
He said he was concerned that civics was not taught in our schools.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the gravity of what he was talking about, Jim, until now. What's that?
Yeah. I mean, lesson number one, I've done some teaching, which you mentioned, to law students. But lesson number one, there's 3 departments, and they each have specific responsibilities in the Constitution. And here they are. And this is the way it works. It doesn't always work because of this or that. There have been times in history, we're going to talk about that, where it didn't work. But most of the time it works and goes to committees. It's studied and all of that. We don't have one person signing papers with regard to all these various matters. We don't have one person deciding that we're going to withdraw, evidently, from Europe, where we have so much in common.
Mm-hmm.
We have so much in common. I'm talking across the board, art, you name it, with France and Germany and philosophy.
Yes.
I go to a philosophy class at Cal, and I understand about 60% of it, but it's fun to do. Philosophy. We have so much in common with these countries, and he's focused on how much they pay. And what he could do, of course, is simple, is just talk to the prime minister and say, you really need to pay more. No, he attacks everybody. Well, what happens when a president attacks everybody and withdraws from almost everything? And who gets hurt? How many unemployed people are there out there right now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm a liberal Democrat. I identify with employed people. And when they're unemployed by the richest man in the world, and he celebrates by holding a saw.
Yeah.
What kind of person? Suppose that you and I were in charge of a huge corporation and we had to lay off people. What kind of person celebrates that? They've got to go home. They got to tell their family, I don't have a job. What are we going to do? What is the celebration? No, that is very unusual conduct. Let's put it that way. I could be a lot stronger, but let's put it that way.
If you were called to represent someone who was unlawfully detained in this situation, how would you approach it?
Well, I'd interview them, and I'd want to know all about them, their background, how they got here, what they experienced in their home country. I did that in the sanctuary case in Tucson. We interviewed about 40 people who had fled Guatemala and El Salvador. Those stories would bring tears to a stone.
Mm-hmm.
And they're real. You can tell they're real because they have a flattened affect, as the psychologist might say, because what they went through. And I won't take your time with stories, but you can just
no, please do. This is your thing. Please do.
They stay with you. There's one young man who was arrested in Tucson. He came across the border, and he was claiming sanctuary, and he was looking for a court to hold that it was there. What had he gone through? He was in school. He was 14, and suddenly they looked out the window, and there were troops surrounding the school. Wow. They came into the school. They took his brother, who was 2 grades ahead of him. He was 16. He never saw his brother again. And I guarantee the people watching this, if you heard that story, you would believe it. The idea that every one of the 50,000, 500,000, whatever it might be, is some kind of drug lord or something is ridiculous. The problem, though, is the number of people that came in short periods of time. But it's interesting that Biden really ejected, if you want to use it that way, more people than Trump has done so far.
Yeah, it is. I were talking about stories. I think something that I'm reminded of when I became a columnist in Montclair. This was 1993.
Yeah.
On BART. And chat up a conversation with a woman sitting across from me, and she was an immigration lawyer. And long story short, she had a story she brought to me that I published about a man from a town I had never heard of called San Coliseum. He was the mayor of the town.
Yeah.
He owned a radio station, and they have a word for the thugs and the gangs down there, threatened to kill him if he didn't let them use his radio station.
Yeah.
So he fled the country and wound up in San Rafael. And he was going to get, of all things, milk one day, and a van came up and literally yanked him off the street.
Yeah.
He wound up in San Francisco in a 7x7 room with about 30 other people, which you can imagine is pretty crowded. And that's how Laura met him. She was with the California Lawyers for the Arts. Remember that organization?
Yeah.
And she got him asylum. And then he eventually was working on getting his family back. And I tell that story not just because I experienced it from a standpoint of writing about it from Montclair readers. My first thought was, we don't have an understanding what really happens down there. And it seems like, and that was 1993. And here we are, in 2025, and we still don't have an understanding or appreciation for what's going on there.
Well, right? We not only, as a nation, didn't have an understanding at that time about Guatemala and El Salvador. Our military was helping their military. They were getting cars from Detroit that had glass windows you couldn't see into the car, so they could grab people off the street. The details of the terror were something that the lawyers had to go through in the trial. And but asylum is in the laws. It hasn't been repealed as far as I know. The problem is we don't have enough judges. They tried to get more judges, but they didn't succeed, who would sit. Due process is about the individual. Snatching people off the street is about terror. Creates terror. And we live in an age of video. When a Tufts student is surrounded by 3 or 4 and then 5 men and 1 woman, I think, on the street, and she's trying to figure out, who are you? What's going on? Let me just say, That is not America. That is never going to be America. People are in the street, and they should be.
Hey, Jim, why doesn't Congress pass a law that law enforcement can't do that? Just if that's terror and it has nothing to do with enforcing the law, really, why not? Can we take the theatrics out of it?
Politics can consume the soul of the individual. Politics can become the only reality. The politics that Trump has created with and sometimes people don't understand what he's doing, but the symbolism of what he does. He just accused all the cities in the nation of engaging in voter cheating. It must be nice. I wish I could have done that, and juries just made a comment like that. And it doesn't work that way. You have to present facts in a courtroom, and he never does. He'll look at the camera and say, "He's a very bad person." What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Are you talking that he opposed you or something? I mean, he doesn't agree with what you're doing? What are you talking about? Most recently, I saw a wonderful play that had to do with a reporter who went right at Joseph McCarthy. I was in college. I remember it. And he went on TV with all the danger attached to it, and he went right at him. And you have to do that. Somebody had to do that, and I think they betrayed America because they didn't do it.
Which play? Was that the George Clooney play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful, wonderful play. And they televised the play the other night.
Oh, it's CNN. I missed that. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's and timely. You gotta, if it's running anywhere, you take a look at it. You'll love it, being a news person yourself. And I kept waiting for someone with the courage to go right at him, but they never did. The Democrats didn't.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What's the key to getting out of this for us? Because you said a couple of things that really piqued my interest as much as that's possible, beyond the high level it's already at, obviously. But you said that the laws that were passed regarding presidential immunity essentially set the stage for an authoritarian government. And what I was going to ask you was, do you believe that was actually part of the process to get Donald Trump reelected? Because then there are also those who believe and claim that Elon Musk rigged electronic votes in 6 different states to give Trump the advantage. And I'm wondering now if someone should go back and do some sort of research. Here, I know people say it's conspiracy theory, but here's my response to that. On the internet, 2 people talking anywhere could be a conspiracy to do anything. So it's not a theory, it becomes more fact than anything else, right? And so, from that perspective, why not have a research group or committee go back and look at these seemingly disparate acts and find out if there indeed was some sort of skunk works going on of people who had this secret project to get Donald Trump, put back into office to do what he's doing now.
Well, I'm not a politician, so I don't really understand why I'm limited in what I can contribute. some bozo for whom I have zero. Well, I shouldn't talk about him, but some other person is contributing $250 million.
Yeah.
And then guess who goes to the dinners in the White House?
Yeah.
But the outs. How are we going to get out of this? Okay. Number one is starting to be politically okay for Democrats to go after him. What they were afraid of, I will never understand.
Yeah.
Because
No.
they're not elected from his districts, but they were quiet. Now they're outraged. They have material to be outraged about, and there's something about 5 million people in the streets that emboldens you to speak. And so that's number one, that there's going to be that chorus of people making their points. And number one. And number two, and this might even be more important, is anybody getting bored out there with Donald Trump? I mean, is anybody tired of the anger and the division?
I'm not bored, but I'm tired.
Obvious division of people. And certainly, I think that has happened in our history. There was a group called the Know Nothings. And they were in the 1850s. And they were against Catholics. And so they were organizing all the Protestants into a party. They lost. And there comes a time when people just get tired of this anger. And I think we're beginning to get there. But more important, the real answer is the Democrats win a majority in the House. Not sure about the Senate. Not sure they will have a majority in the Senate, but they'll have enough in the House to impeach, and they have a world of material to do it. High crimes and misdemeanors. There's corruption that is not being hidden.
Yeah, it's in our face. The emoluments clause is laughed at on a regular basis. You know, what's going on, it really does scare me because here's what bothers me, briefly, aside from what we're talking about, but related to, and this has to do with Elon Musk and cutting jobs in the federal government. When I went to economics courses and I learned that GDP, gross domestic product, was C plus I plus G plus NE, which is exports. G is government. So if I want consumption to be high because it means GDP is high. I want investment to be high. That's the I, business investment, because it grows. G, I want that to be high too. That's government spending because government helps the economy. That's Keynesian economics. When the other two go low, you push up the government investment. So here we are cutting people and trying to reach a $2 trillion target. And I'm saying, hey, wait a minute. Isn't that going to shrink the government? And then lo and behold, the government did shrink.
I know. I haven't heard that mentioned.
Right. So you're hearing it here.
You just mentioned it. I haven't heard it.
Right. Because, hey, big picture. Yeah, people didn't take civics or economics. They don't understand macro. I got an F the first time in economics, not to go on a soliloquy about this, but I did it because I thought then I knew it all because I had, the dime store idea, right? That people who watch television have. I deserved the F. I went back and I got a B plus.
Yeah.
My point is now we have people who think they know it all and they tie to the political, they hold on to it. They don't let go of it. And so they become politicians and elected officials running things with these ideologies. And then they're dumbfounded to understand, hey, look, how come the economy is shrinking after I cut expenditures? We fired people. And that it seems like at a granular level, these developments over the decades have culminated with this person who, if you think about it, Donald Trump is the first elected official who dared push the button of racism and used it as a tool. We all thought that was, remember George Walker, we all thought people like were crackpots, and they were. But he did it. And he's acknowledged as a crackpot, but he's also powerful.
Well, he would have people to dinner And it was my practice to usually know who was coming to my dinner, to my house. And, and then the next day they'd say, that person is a avowed babuba.
Yeah.
I never met him really. I didn't talk to him when he was there. And someone, okay. And commentators were mocking him. There was a lot of mocking that went on. He just made a point. Excuse me. He's supportive of that person if you pay attention.
Yeah. That's the scariest aspect of it. And
White supremacy. I'm writing a book. I'm enjoying it greatly. And it's a history of the exclusion of people all the way back to the early Greeks. I don't know if it'll ever sell a copy, but I'm having a wonderful time doing it.
It'll fly off the shelves. Are you kidding me?
If you ask, how long have women been suppressed? Okay, the answer is the early Greeks and probably before that in the caves. And how long is it? And I give examples of it. And I give examples of women that rose above. Once I get started here, you're in a lot of trouble here.
No, that's great. That's what this is for. Please do.
Yeah, but that period from 1960, and I was active in things in 1960 as a lawyer, until Trump runs in 2016. That period saw more inclusion in the United States than probably any period of time in the past. The number of women went from very small, who were lawyers, to about a third at the moment. About a third of all the lawyers are women. We're taking that for granted. The status quo is always assumed to continue. We think that Trump won't have an effect on that. He is marching back under the guise of a conservative vision into the period where people were excluded for all kinds of reasons. He's made it clear that he has questions about the disabled. Yeah. And he's...
Aren't we allowing somebody like that to break the law even because we're not paying attention? If they're as reckless as...
Well, there's nobody to bring the charges.
Huh.
He put all these other people in charge of all those agencies. And they're not going to bring any of those cases. There may be some left who will be able to bring some cases or something, but the effort is coming to a stop. The progressive, think of all the statutes, the Civil Rights Act, all those statutes that cover the elimination of people. And he's for that. If I ever saw a person who is signaling to the white people in the United States, it is Donald Trump. And when he brought white refugees from South Africa, that was for a reason. What was that reason?
To basically send a signal.
He's good at it.
Yeah.
Anybody who underestimates his language, he's a terrible man.
Yeah.
He's a terrible man. And that everybody thinks, well, I guess he must be a terrible man, at least enough to get elected. But we've never really had, I don't know that we ever had a situation where a president had Supreme Court support, a president has a silent Congress, and the judiciary. He's got all three departments in his favor. We're going to see some cases in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Transgender. There were transgender people fighting for the Republic in the Civil War.
That far back. Wow.
I've got a picture of one. That's the stuff that I'm really enjoying putting in the book.
Yeah. Hey, curious. Do you think that Trump miscalculated regarding thinking that he was going to ignite white folks because now we have so many interracial marriages? I mean, just by the millions, different combinations, folks of color, it just seems like his timing is almost 40 years too late. What say you?
Well, he got a lot of white voters going back. When you say going back to a conservative vision,
Mm-hmm.
you mean when there was discrimination against people of color? Is that where you're going? I mean, really?
Yeah, sure.
I lived in that time.
Yeah.
And played sports in that time, but what he thinks he's going to do a few things. He's going to make as much money out of this job as he can, selling Bibles and things of that kind. So he's going to make as much money as he can. His family's going to make as much money as he can. We've never had that before, and public.
No. And no one's suing him.
His sons are building something in Serbia, and something.
Yeah, they're letting him do it, Jim. That's what bothers me. Our party, we're Democrats. We're letting him do it. We're not trying to throw that legislative punch. We're not trying to throw that legal punch. It's like we're scared as a party.
Well,
I hope I'm wrong.
This is an old man's comment. I don't think we have the quality. Obviously, we don't. If you were in the Senate right now, wouldn't it occur to you it might be a really good time to run for president and start talking about it today?
If I were in the Senate now, the way that I think, I would be trying to find that legal loophole that would get us out from under him. I don't care if it's some obscure law that goes like 70 years. I would have my interns. I would bring in extra interns on a secret shock-proof project. I would have everybody sign NDAs. And I would say, hey, look, we need to find those sets of laws that he's breaking that we didn't even consider. And then we need to make a list and then make an attack and then we need to launch it. And I would do that now. It wouldn't be about me running for president. It would be about me doing the research as senator, because I would have people in my town hall. You've seen these town halls online, right? Going nuts.
Sure.
Right. I would be doing the work for my constituents and people who want this change, was really everybody, including people who voted for Trump, who are not happy. Okay. To really,
there's enough of those.
Yeah. To really right the ship. That's what I would be doing.
Yeah. No, there's enough of those to win an election. There's no election, but there's also the answer to your question is, don't they have responsibility when they're in public office to do exactly what you just said?
Yes, sir.
Is there no one that we can all count on that's
Yes,
going to?
sir.
There are a few, but they're very few.
Yes, sir.
What are they afraid of? I hear that everybody's afraid of Trump.
Right.
And even the suggestion that, he castigates people on telephones and yells at them or something. I've been yelled at in my life. Who cares?
I do have an answer for you, unfortunately. I believe we saw a window of fear expressed in the actions of the murder of that Minnesota couple. And the shooting of the other couple, and by this rabid MAGA 57-year-old who obviously had the guy handled bodies for a living, delivering them to the morgue.
Yeah.
And we have more instances like that all over the place. It's almost becoming like Russian roulette. It's horrifying. Hey, go ahead, please. You want to say something?
Well, it is scary. And I know people who have a certain level of fear about the situation, and he's instilled that. What is he really good at? He's good at accusing. He's like Senator Joseph McCarthy in the 50s. This one, I have a list of communists who are right here in the middle of the Cold War with the Russians who are communists. And I have a list of these people. These people are making movies. Can you believe it? In Hollywood. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. And they weren't. The Hollywood 10, they were out. Wow. He had that ability. And so that's what we're facing. And no political out that I see at the present time until he does something that goes too far. And he's capable of doing that because he's filled with his self. I kept saying, well, at least he doesn't have the army. I was wrong about that.
Oh,
they marched right down the street, didn't they?
Yeah.
They marched right down the street.
They sure did.
And I don't blame them. God help us, no. It's not their fault. They followed an order to march on a given day and in celebration of the Army, which should be celebrated for everything that they're doing and right now and their predecessors did and all that. Where are we going on all this? I think that I have not given up the idea that people don't really like, when you look at some of the issues, they don't like to be told from above what to do. How else explain, I don't want to be told I have to take a shot, which I think we should all take shots for serious illnesses and so forth. But there are millions of people who say, no, I want to decide this. How about the people who are opposed to certain things being taught in school? Well, they're parents and they don't want that taught. So his supporters, I think, are becoming soured on what they're witnessing on video every night. Every night, there it is. If you look at a certain channel.
Yes, sir.
And I think they'll get tired of him. I know I'm tired of him.
Yeah, ditto.
And I know he doesn't scare me. I feel like the governor of California. You know, you want to arrest me, 91-year-old man?
Wasn't that brilliant for Gavin?
Well,
you know Gavin.
If you do, Mr. Trump, you'll never hear the end of it.
That's right.
Because I'll never be quiet. Never.
That's right. Before we, I don't know how much time you have. I have a lot of time, but I want to respect your time. Do I have time to ask you about the Shrimp Boy case?
The what?
The Shrimp Boy case. This
yeah.
one. Yeah. I wanted you talk to my readers about this. And Mr. Jackson, congratulations on your work on it. But it seemed like a really complex case. Can you tell my viewers about what this is about? Because I never was able to find an explanation I wrap my mind around. Now that I've got you in here, I can ask. This is an article that says Leland Yee, Shrimp Boy, other defendants back in court. You were quoted here.
Yes. Yes. Well, there we were.
I can put that back right
there. I claim I don't think I ever turned down a case. I turned down one case because I was in trial in another case and my partner tried the case. I don't think I ever turned down a case because of the difficulty of it. I had this kind of bizarre idea that it'd be a challenge, and I liked it. Here was a man who was on the Board of Education of the city of San Francisco. and got himself involved in allegedly, and so I'll just keep saying allegedly, in a plot for murder. Now, that doesn't happen every day. And so I was asked to represent him, and I did. And we were able to get him a plea agreement, and he did serve his time and is coming to an end, I believe, at the moment of his time. But what fascinated me about the law, and if you have any young people out there who want to be lawyers, what fascinated me about the law was the situations that people get themselves into. Not just that case, but all kinds of cases. I had cases where people on Tuesday were head of one of the largest corporations in the world, literally, and on Friday they're in total disgrace. And they go from here, down to here like that. What is the psychology of that? How could they do that? What made them do it? Trying to understand. Some really good criminal lawyers don't want to know exactly all the details of everything, and they try short cases that way. But I always, where are we now? What is going on here? And what possible avenue can this person take that will minimize the injury? And when you think about what lawyers do, we give advice every day, all day, and it's always about the future. And who can tell a client what the future will hold? But I love that. I miss it, and I write about it, as you mentioned in my book, Justice at Trial. But that was that case. How could somebody be on the Board of Education and allegedly talking about a murder? I mean, how did, what were you thinking? Allegedly, what were you thinking?
What was he thinking?
That was that case, but it's an example of what I really enjoyed for all those years.
Get this book, folks, Justice at Trial, Courtroom Battles and Groundbreaking Cases. What was your favorite case as you look back on, and what was the one that?
The one I can talk about, I think, for bizarre reasons, was the case of John Walker Lindh, because the federal government tried to turn him into something he really wasn't. And for those, most of your people watching wouldn't remember it, but he went to Afghanistan he landed there about 4 days before the Saudis, who were in Afghanistan, attacked New York City. And he was in the Taliban, but he was there because he was experiencing a country that was a total Muslim country, including laws. And that Afghanistan at that time was that he had converted to Islam, and he was a scholar in Islam, and he wanted to experience all parts of it. Well, they found him in Afghanistan, and the president and everybody else took to television and said what a horrible man he was and so forth. He actually was a very scholarly, a very bright individual, and never fired a gun in Afghanistan under the Taliban. And I think he had learned how to, but he never did fire a gun. And what I liked about it, and this is something bizarre in my personality, I loved it that they were all coming at us from all directions, and there we were right in the middle of it. And that it really was quite an experience. I'd go outside the courthouse and there'd be 70 news people there. And so and I had a great team of lawyers with me. And I used to say, what's the job of a senior partner at Morrison Foerster? The job of a senior partner is take credit for what other lawyers are doing while you're holding the press conference. and I'm kind of kidding, but the one Tony West and George Harris and the team was great.
Hey, talk about our friend Tony West. We did off camera, but you had some great things to say about him on that case and in general, right?
Yeah. Well, Tony has wonderful lawyer skills. And by that, I mean good skills, good personal skills. He can get along with anybody. And that helps. That can be very good when you're in a tough situation. And Tony talks to the prosecutor maybe, and we get a little better deal than we might have got. And very interesting person who served at various levels. He was interested in politics. He went to, where did he go? To one of the drink, Pepsi. He was general counsel of Pepsi. I just sat there amazed at all the different things he was doing and not surprised. And, some people, I never quite understood how he got to be deputy in the Department of Justice after having represented John Walker Lindh. So, I mean, this man is charming. I mean, he's got a wonderful family. We tried a bunch of cases. We tried a case, I think you mentioned it, for Raiders football.
Yes.
Who had been punched by his teammate.
Bill Romanowski.
In practice, yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about trying to understand people. And there we were, he ripped the helmet off in practice.
That's
and
right.
hit him
Yeah.
200 pounds of force. And my client never played another game in his life.
Oh,
and he had been on the Super Bowl team the year before on special teams, but he had great speed, and he was a great big guy, and he could run just very fast.
Yeah. Was Bill Romanowski, was he on speed or something? He had a briefcase of drugs.
I don't want to speculate, but I mean, he had a certain personality. Let's put it that way. And it was.
I remember a clip I saw of Bill. This was before the snap, and he was so keyed up. He's literally doing this.
Yeah.
And I thought, you got to be absolutely freaking Fruit Loops, man. I mean, he was just so like angered up, right?
Yeah.
He amped himself up to another level,
Well, you mean we're talking about the president again?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Bill Romanowski voted for Donald Trump, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll never know. But I really do wonder about the anger of the president. He's an angry person.
Yeah.
If you're out there, you're a very angry person. And that doesn't always go with being president, or at least being a good president.
No. No.
You're angry at everybody. Within the last 24 hours, you were angry at the 5 major cities in the country which you govern.
Yeah.
Let me know how that works out.
Yeah. The one thing I can say I learned from Donald Trump, and I'll just be 100% transparent, I was a huge Donald Trump fan when he was on The Apprentice. I was a big fan of it. I tried to get on the show, and you would say, I even bought the book, The Art of the Deal. I got caught up in all that. But the reason was that, and I think, if you think about it, it was 2004, and the spread of information wasn't then as efficient as it is today, A. B, Donald Trump was just getting to a point where light was being shined on him. But I assumed, just like anyone else who tried on, that the last, or tried to be on the show, that the last thing he would be was, you know, a racist or something like that. You know, you think, oh, that applies to me, right? And I got as far as a casting call. I was the best person, the only person with a suit. And there were 2 guys, white, that dressed like they had literally walked in off of a bar. And the young lady there treated them with all the graciousness and respect and all this. And me, I mean, you would have thought I was the Undertaker or something, you know? And I was so livid. I drove back. I tried to tell Mr. Trump, and I was going to go to Trump Tower. I was so mad and all this stuff. And then it slowly came out about how he really was.
Yeah.
And I felt like at the time we were being sold a bill of goods, which is justice being established, his popularity was really taking off.
Yeah.
And so you would never catch up to where he was. And then from back research, we find out that he sold the Miss Universe pageant to a group of Russians, I believe put together by an oligarch that was a friend of Vladimir Putin. And somewhere in there, it's murky, but there are a number of Russian people on Facebook who are actually Facebook friends now.
Yeah.
Who've written about how he was, I guess you could say, radicalized in a sense. It's all, you would say, unbelievable stuff, but then you see what we have now, and I wonder, I wonder if really, I hate to say this on camera, so I won't, but I do wonder if there's something back there, some deal or arrangement he made that we really need to know about, or someone knows about. I think Trump's former communications fellow said very recently that Putin has something on him because they showed a naked picture of Melania Trump in Russia the day that Trump won the election here last year. Yes.
Well, it's a great mystery as to the change in international strategy and policy as why, and this is a failure in itself. Why exactly did we withdraw or talk about withdrawing, or maybe we're going to withdraw from Europe, maybe? Why did we do that? And at the same time, for the most part, with 1 or 2 exceptions, say nothing nice about a communist. A communist is the head of Russia, which has been communist since 2017 and has been hostile to America during that whole period of time. And we're his friend.
Yeah.
It's a question.
Isn't that treason, Jim?
And it's never been answered.
Isn't that treason?
I've never heard him anyway. This is what I never heard. I never heard, good evening, ladies and gentlemen in America. I want to tell you why I'm doing this. So what you make of that, I don't know. And, we're on television, and my secret theories are not relevant here. But we're entitled to wonder what the hell is going on there. and it hasn't really been explained by him.
No, or asked by us. You don't have Democrats on some.
Well, that's right.
No, you don't have any group of Democrats on CNN saying, or any publication or any scheduled thing, or some big town hall, right? Which you don't even need to be on network to get a huge audience today.
What are we getting out of it? Why make friends with Putin? What do we get? Which is the bottom line of politics. What do we get?
I think I'm on the White House press list, and I think I'm long enough to make this observation. I think what Trump would say is that we get a peace and stability we didn't have before. And that is hard to argue against. We always had
it won't work. There's that point.
Right. True.
No, it's not going to work with Putin.
No. And not only that, though.
People, evidently.
Right. And something else that's a big, giant negative feedback loop in all this is that in order for us to get this kind of cooperation, we have to literally turn our backs on our allies in Europe and make them feel like they're threatened. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 8 different pieces, because I'm on the European Union list as well.
Yeah.
Of changes in spending they made, bolstering their defense, because they said we're in an unprecedented time because of changes in the American approach, as it was put in one of those that I posted on zenireport.com. It scared the heck out of me, because they are near the border and they feel the proximity to this suddenly emboldened Russia, and wondering what's next.
Well, I don't wonder what's next. Putin will try to take, he may not succeed, but he'll try to take the Ukraine, and then he'll try to take Poland, and then he'll stop when he might stop when he has the old Russian Empire, or he might not. And it'll, as long as he's around. That all is a mystery to me, and I can't make accusations so that I don't have evidence about anything. But it's very bizarre and scary, because it's a huge shift in what Eisenhower built. Eisenhower, there's a name. I never thought, I didn't think he was that good a president, but he was a hell of a general. And people died. A lot of them died. I had uncles who didn't die, but they fought. And we were at the, this is an old man talking, but we were at the top of our game.
You sound pretty young to me, Jim.
And we were the place where scientists wanted to come. And we just canceled $12 billion worth of scientific research. What is that about? Who thinks that's a good idea?
Not me.
No.
Not
and so we got we have so many, the whole idea was to push so many ideas that the rest of us, we couldn't, can't keep track of.
Right, yeah.
And they can't. The Supreme Court can't keep track of it. I just was reading all the cases again this morning. Supreme Court can't keep track of it, what he's doing. And they're doing some, I think, strange procedures to try to accommodate him.
Let me ask you, how would that impact their ability to really effectively evaluate a case?
Well, you have several streams that are working. One of them is to minimize to the maximum extent any doctrines, like what's in the First Amendment, about limiting financial assistance to religious schools. And you're going to see that in a case called Oklahoma. You're not going to see it in that case because they split 4-4, and Barrett didn't vote because I think that was legitimate. She had some close connection with one of the parties or something. But a case is coming for sure that allows, under certain circumstances, for taxpayer money to be used to support religious schools. And there's some cases, a few already, who have found a way to do that. Well, yeah. And that First Amendment language, which is very clear, and the book I'm writing tells you why the founders were very clear. I mean, Henry VIII had lived about 80 years before the Constitution was adopted, maybe a little bit more than that. And Henry VIII demanded that everybody be a member of his new Protestant religion. It's interesting old history. But the founders knew all about those tyrannies, and they didn't want it. And they put the language down that anybody could understand. The federal government will not establish a religion. And so there's an interesting history there. But anyway, when you get somebody like Trump, who's ready to run over everybody and everything, I have to think that will not work in the long run, and I'm not sure it's working right now. The march, the military march, it's not us really, is it?
No, that's what weak countries do.
On his birthday, but it's not really us.
Oh.
I was in the Air Force. I mean, that's not what we do. But at the same time, 5 million people are out there, and some small towns, and in Idaho, where there's a lot of Trump voters.
Oh, and then also, if I can add, just on the news today, in DeKalb County, you had a group of people unlawfully detained by the 20 to 25 of them. The court said it was only 5. What they were doing, they happened to be at work near the protest. Their cars were parked in this area, and they would go to move the car, and they kindly explained to the officer, well, I'm trying to move my car, and next thing you know, you get arrested.
Yeah.
Just snapped up.
Yep.
And they spent 18 hours in jail and just got out today.
This opinion of mine goes back to the trial I had in Tucson and a case I had later on behalf of a man, and I'll try to keep it short, but I formed an opinion based on those cases because they involved the immigration agents. And keep in mind, for 5 years, I was a federal prosecutor. And I know agents in every department, the FBI and IRS and all that. And I came to the opinion after those cases that, and I repeat it without question, that the immigration people who work on these cases are the most undisciplined, the most out of control, the most in need of reform, of any agency in the federal government. And I saw it. I had a client who was a U.S. citizen, mentally limited. They put him on a bus. They dumped him in Tijuana. He had a mental breakdown. His mother spent 3 months looking for him in the morgues in Tijuana. Why is that, American people? Why is that? Because they deal with the most hapless, powerless people in the world. Nobody knows until now, the things they do, and they love to do it. And I actually retained my naivete. When those cases were over, I thought somebody will come along and reform them. They never did. They never did. Now they have a head of that agency who thinks that habeas corpus is the power of the president. Okay, come on, America. Wake up, America. Let's go.
Is that the same person that basically had our senator beaten up?
Yeah. Yeah. Thrown on the floor, handcuffs. Yeah. And you know what? That's all about? That's all about showing we have the power.
Mm-hmm.
And you better be afraid. Imagine that. That's the real message of a United States senator lying on a floor being handicapped. That's the message they were sending. Be afraid. Well, 5 million people evidently are not afraid, so that's good.
Jim, we have to have you back because I don't want to tax you.
Well, there'll be more material.
Oh yeah. Just wait, right?
Yeah, really. I got to check the TV.
Yeah, there'll be something coming down the pipe.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for coming on and spending this valuable time. It's a godsend, I mean, really, because I've heard a lot about you, read about you, and here you are, and it's a great.
Oh yeah, I was very lucky. I was very blessed. One of those people. There's a lot of them in the U.S., I guess, that find their thing. That was my thing, to be a trial lawyer, and I had a good time doing it.
And it's great that I have to say, nothing against being here. I'm here for my mom, of course, and here in Georgia, but I'm constantly reminded of the greatness of the Bay Area, and by being able to connect with people like yourself, because we truly are, I believe, a nation unto ourselves. And got a lot of great people in it, and you're one of them.
Yeah, I was lucky. I grew up as a young lawyer watching some of the best trial lawyers anywhere in San Francisco. They were worth going down the courthouse and just sit there and watch them.
It was one of those Mel Belli?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The real character, Jake Ehrlich, James Martin McGinnis. These names have faded, but if you watch them cross-examine someone, Jake Ehrlich was one of the best cross-examiners I ever saw. And
what made him a good cross-examiner? I'm curious.
Well, preparation would help, but short questions and from absolute knowledge and the voice. That I used to teach this at Berkeley Law. The voice is everything, because you can start with a witness and sound like you're kind of their friend. You're just trying to get a little help here. If you can help me out a little bit, and somebody, how boom. I hope I didn't frighten any of your viewers. But, I got to tell you, you don't need to take drugs. The adrenaline that comes into you when you've got the witness, you have the witness, the jury is leaning. That was the key. The jury is kind of leaning forward like this, and you got them. And the adrenaline is all you need.
And that's when you knew you had the winner?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. I'm curious, as we close, 'cause I want to get you to the bottom of the hour, but what, in your opinion, in your view, which TV or movie do you think best represents the law? So we have Suits, we've got Law and Order, we've got,
Perry Mason is the most accurate, even now.
Wow.
And Perry Mason is still on. It's all very professional with him. He's pretty calm, which you want to be most of the time. You just kind of settle your client down and you're trying to do it. And then he usually has a cross-examination or a discovery of important facts and all of that. I think that's one of the most accurate. I think 12 Angry Men displays an important part of the whole business, which is group therapy. I'm a great believer, and there's actually a philosopher in Paris that I heard speak one time. Group therapy. Don't tell me that 12 people in a room, 12, it has to be 12, it can't be 6. But 12 people in a room aren't going to try very hard to get to, what the answer is, because they are going to try. And group therapy, somebody in that room remembers the facts, the details, and they correct each other. One time I decided to read all the books and articles by jurors because I thought, I'll learn a lot. And there's very impressive body of literature about how they do it and what they do. Phony what doesn't last 5 minutes in front of a jury. They see it, they get it, and they have to figure out the case themselves. But usually the people who attack juries have never seen one, so that limits them.
See 12 Angry Men.
There you go.
Incredible.
That's a very good, wonderful cast, by the way.
Yeah.
Henry Fonda. Whoa.
Martin Balsam.
Oh.
Yep.
They all had been in or were going to wonderful other movies of various kinds.
Yeah, see this, folks. You definitely have to see. I think it's occasionally played on Turner Classic Movies. I got to be careful not to trigger a copyright claim there. But
I'll defend you.
Thank you.
I'll come out of retirement.
Honor. Thank you. I'll be honored. Thank you. I'll be quite an honor. Okay. Jim, fantastic almost 90 minutes of discussion. Any closing thoughts as we
I think we're going to be all right with Trump. I think America is going to get very tired of his anger and his failures. Actually, it's a little too early to talk about his settlement of all these wars in various places he was going to do in 60 minutes. And, for the country's sake, I hope he could settle a few things, but I don't think that the worst thing I can say about him, I don't think the rest of the world takes him seriously.
That's true.
I don't.
That's true.
I think they flatter him. The Saudis, that was, I thought, embarrassing. He thought it was wonderful. And they had red carpets and they had all kinds of stuff. And he just thinks that's wonderful, but whatever.
We'll be back to follow up on that and whatever, because whatever's going to be a lot. You have to move a muscle. I got this. Hey, everybody. If you haven't done so before, subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube. Bookmark ZennyReport.com and OaklandNewsOnline.com, as well as NFL News by Zenny62.com and San Diego Comic-Con News.com and CES Las Vegas News.com. Jim, we have a lot of sites.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. And that ends this stream. And